that the I the I being in control is the principal problem with awakening, is that we're identified with this I that is supposedly in control. And the difficulty in getting rid of this I that is in control is there's a big emotional block that keeps us from getting rid of it. That this I in control protects us from bad feelings and bad thoughts. And we try to keep them down by being in control. So Bob said that. I'm just going to say it again, and I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to say it again, because that is the heart of the matter. That's what it's all about. I'm going to start off with something that I'm going to plant a bomb. A lot of teachers teach by gently removing ignorance with a little Q-tip of knowledge, and some teachers plant seeds and water them and hope that they germinate. And Richard Rose was kind of a crash and bash kind of guy, and make it happen. And I really am in the mood to drop a bomb and destroy ignorance once and for all. But I was thinking about it. Maybe it's not a bomb; it's a landmine. So I'm going to drop that. I'm going to plant the landmine. I hope it takes root, and then I'm just going to get on with the talk. The landmine is: there is no such thing as free will. You do not have free will. I do not have free will. Free will is a delusion. That there is an I in there that's in control and has free will is an absolute delusion. So I hope it takes root. And I'm not the only one that says that. I mean, if you look at the spiritual literature, it's full of it. And this is an idea that came out. The ancient Hindus had it. The Vedanta is full of it. The ancient Greeks were aware of it. At least they questioned it. The Romans were aware of it. Modern philosophers are aware of it. And even today, there's a whole lot of research being done questioning what is the nature of consciousness, what is awareness. They don't have any answers for that. But here's an article by a guy named Anthony Cashmore. Free will is an illusion, biologist says. And in here he's this is from he's a biologist, and I think he works at the University of Pennsylvania or something like that. And this is, and I've got copies of these if you'd like them. I'll give them to anybody who wants them. You don't want something hard in your hand that you can hold on to. These are the proceedings from the National Academy of Sciences. It's very short, just 2 pages, but it even has a little description of the idea that we have free will and the kind of the proof that we don't. Here's another article called Unconscious Determinants of Free Decisions in the Human Brain. And this is by a group of authors at the Max Planck Institute for Human Cognitive Brain Sciences. So if you don't believe me, you can believe them, maybe.
If we don't have free will, would you be willing to tell us what we do have?
Cosmic consciousness? That all of the decisions that we make, that we take to be our decisions, these articles are pointing out that actually the nervous system, every decision we make, every conscious volitional act we perform is preceded by the mental activity that created it. So we think, I'm going to scratch my nose. Well, before I even had the thought, I'm going to scratch my nose, a half second before, all the mental activity for I think I'm going to scratch my nose had already taken place. So it feels like self-will. It feels like we have volition and that we're performing actions by an act of our own will. But all the activity in the nervous system took place a half a second earlier. So where did the decision to scratch the nose come from? It didn't come from me, who has the feeling, as soon as I have that feeling I'm going to scratch my nose, I can recognize that actually happened a half a second earlier. So I'm behind the curve all the time. Everything I say has already been decided what I'm going to say half a second earlier. Before I know I'm going to, when I know that I'm going to say it, it's already happened half a second earlier. This one study says it's not only half a second, it can be as much as 10 seconds. That's a heck of a long time, lag time. Go ahead.
It'll be 10 years.
Well, maybe, yeah, but I'm thinking, I'm actually saying that what we consider free will took place up to 10 seconds earlier. So that's the bomb. If you just have that in your mind and refer to that, do I have free will? And this is, you can't take anybody else's word for this. This is something you have to answer yourself. But I'm just planting the bomb.
So would you say that we have no will?
We have will, but it is not ours. It is the will of the cosmos. The idea that we are exercising free will, we're busy supposedly interfering in a chain of cause and effect that goes back to the Big Bang. So, and I think it's probably programmed into our genes that we have free will. This idea, I think it's good. It's good for society that people feel that they have free will, and it helps us make people accountable for their actions. Somebody does something that's against society, they go out and rob or steal or do something, we can say, well, we can't say, well, poor person couldn't help himself. He had to rob that bank because he doesn't have any free will, so none of us do, so, okay, well, but you can't do that. You have to hold people accountable. People go out and kill people. You have to put them away. You have to pretend, at least, that they have free will. So I think this is built into the human animal. We're a social animal, and it's got to have some biological or some evolutionary benefit, this concept of free will. But the fact is, it is not true. It is an illusion. And it's a delusion. It is the principal delusion that keeps us from realizing that we are the absolute. We have this feeling that I have free will, I'm in control, I'm separate, and I can make my own decisions, and I have free will. Well, we're already not the absolute anymore. We're separate, off on our own, making our own decisions. And I mean, and it's not true, but it certainly feels true. The trick is, how do we realize that we don't have free will? And everybody has to do it for himself. And I'm here to talk about a way to do that. And Bob saying the same thing Bob did. So those are the two things. I am in control is the principal delusion, and the reason for that idea, I'm in control, is to cover over a whole big mass of unacceptable thoughts and feelings, this emotional stuff that has been talked about earlier. Everything actually starts with the omnipresent absolute, which we are, the omnipresent absolute. It starts off down below the chart in the space, whatever you want to call it, where the absolute is. This is the only thing that is really real, the absolute, the omnipresent being, or whatever you want to call it. Somewhere along the line, this omnipresent absolute vibrates or wiggles. Something happens. It's innate in it, but something happens, and that something is what I call the first vibration. It is in the absolute, but it is also up with the absolute. Now, like it says in the Bible, in the beginning was the Word, vibration, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. So now we've got the beginning of creation. And then who knows what happens in between the point where we enter with modern science, and we talk about quanta and virtual particles and all that, which I've heard mathematicians describe as little pieces of mathematics. They're not things, they're probabilities. They're not non-existent, but they're not real at the same time. But these little pieces of mathematics, what we call quanta, join together and spontaneously. This all happens spontaneously. they form atoms, and the atoms form molecules, and the molecules form eventually proteins and the cells that we're made out of. And these cells eventually make neurons, which start communicating with each other in a way that we become aware of as pure consciousness or thoughtless awareness, nirvikalpa samadhi, which is just spontaneous awareness without any thought. And then this gives rise to all the good stuff that we like: insight, inspiration, intuition, creativity. Eventually we end up with emotion. And one of the first earliest emotions that children feel is fear of death. They realize that, gosh, if mom and dad don't take care of me, I'm going to die. And they tell me, and mom and dad keep saying to me, if I'm not a good boy, that this is going to happen and that's going to happen. And if I'm really not a good boy, they won't love me anymore and they'll kick me out and I'll die. So children really have, it starts in childhood, this fear of death. And then we start, this fear of death, after that comes shame. I must not be a good person. If my parents would kick me out, I must be unlovable and I must be bad. And that's a really intolerable feeling. And so we cover that up with anger. That's just not right, that I'm a bad person, that nobody loves me, that they could kick me out. That anger, all these things here are just socially unacceptable. The kids aren't allowed to be angry. The kids aren't allowed to feel shame. The kids aren't allowed to be afraid of death. So the kids start covering over their feelings and suppressing them, feeling that they must control their feelings to be acceptable. After a while, it's not only I must control my feelings, but I do control my feelings. I can control my feelings. And this is the beginning. This section in here is the beginning of the I concept, the I that's in control. And it's all about control to suppress unacceptable thoughts and feelings, what Bob called the big block of emotion that keeps us from realizing our true self. That's in the way, and it's largely unconscious. It's been there since early childhood. We don't even recognize that we have those feelings anymore. Some of us do. Some of us recognize that we feel shame. Some of us recognize that we're angry. But still, we don't like to dwell on them. They're not acceptable. So we sublimate all that stuff and get into delusions and hypnotize ourselves every day that we're good people and that everything's okay, and get into beliefs, like I'm really a good person. When I die, I'm going to go to heaven. And before you know it, we've created this whole false person that appears to be in control, and we think we are, and we're screwed. We're stuck. We don't even know we've done it. Somebody have their hand up? No. Yes.
Now, what's your source or authority for this whole thing?
I pulled it out of my creative impulses. What? My authority for this is myself, my experience. I went through the same thing everybody else has gone through. I got to a point where I was unhappy. I should probably give you a little background for me. Is that I started off a control freak. I come from a whole family of control freaks, so I came by it honestly. I didn't know. But I was deeply unhappy. And I recognized as a small child, even about 8 or 9 years old, that I felt flawed and defective, that there was something wrong with me and that it couldn't be fixed. My parents knew that there was something wrong with me, and they were just too kind to bring it up because, poor kid, nothing can be done about it anyway. And so I was not able to handle that feeling of being flawed and defective and being unlovable and worthless. And so I started suppressing it. In retrospect, I remember starting to suppress it at 8 or 9 years old. And I just became more and more of a control freak. Once you start this path of controlling things, you have to control everything. It's like lying. You can't just tell one lie. You got to back it up with more lies and keep going and going and going. But I got to a point where I was just absolutely, life had very little meaning. And I started getting into, I did my share of, like Bob, did my share of drugs and whatnot. And one thing I got out of the drugs, I didn't have to do them for very long to realize that when I when I took some LSD, the world changed. I thought I was a realist, but when I took a drug and it changed the way my brain worked, the world changed. So I realized I'm not seeing reality at all. What I'm seeing is the chemicals that are in my brain. That's what I'm seeing. So I started thinking, well, and this is at about age 24, 25. I started thinking, is there a reality? I thought I was seeing it, and now I know I'm not, but is there a reality? So I ran across a few writings, Timothy Leary and Alan Watts and those kind of guys, and they were asking the same questions, and they had turned to Eastern philosophy because Eastern philosophy said, yes, Virginia, there is a reality. It may not be obvious, and you probably aren't seeing it, but it can be found. The reality can be appreciated. There is an underlying reality to all this appearance. So that I thought, okay, well, Eastern philosophy is the direction that I have to look, and got the idea that meditation is a big part of Eastern philosophy, and so I'll start meditating, because if I meditate, I'll learn how to perceive reality. And so I started transcendental meditation, and it was all about letting go of control. And being a control freak, I just could not. I mean, on one level, I had this desire to let go of control, and it really appealed to me. This idea of letting go of control. But on the other hand, I had no idea how you could possibly do that. How can you meditate if you don't meditate? How can you, if I don't do it, it's not going to happen. So I wrestled with that. I meditated off and on and fought with it and wrestled with it and kept coming back to, it's got to be effortless, but how do you do that? How do you do effortlessness? For 20 years. I wrestled with it. I went to India. I spent 3 months listening to Maharishi, and he kept saying over and over again, effortless, effortless, effortless. And for a while there in India, I was effortless at the ashram. I was there for 3 months, so I was able to be effortless for days at a time. But then as soon as I got back to civilization and the real world, I picked up, effort began creeping in right away, and before you knew it, I was back to being a control freak. But still wrestling with it. So for the next 18 years, I wrestled with it until finally I said, this is intolerable. I just can't do this anymore. I can't be on the fence. I can't wrestle with effortlessness. I can't be this is confusion I can't tolerate anymore. And it dawned on me, okay, well, you've tried being effortful and wrestling with it for 20 years. That's long enough. Let's do the next 20 years, we just won't put any effort into it at all. And that did the trick. As soon as I made that decision, in the next meditation, I just didn't lift a finger. I sat down with the intention of thinking the mantra, of meditating as a mantra meditation. But then I didn't do it. I refused to put any effort into it all, and it completely transformed. It took off. And meditation just became deeper and deeper and more quiet and more quiet. And I found myself down at the level of just pure awareness and samadhi, whatever you want to call it. Great. That went on for about a year. And meditation was great. And my life started falling apart. And what was it? I didn't know what was happening, but I reached a point where I felt like a zombie. I felt like I was a dead man. My heart was still in there, squeezing blood and making the body move, but it was just dead, and that was intolerable. That went on for about a year. Great meditations, miserable the rest of the time, and I had no clue what the problem was, but. My brother at that time was attending a 12-step meeting called Adult Children of Alcoholics. And at that meeting, he was saying, you ought to come. This is really good. I'm getting a lot out of it. And I had other friends who were going, saying the same thing, hey, Mike. And they knew I was a control freak. everybody knew but me. And they kept saying, oh, you really ought to come to this meeting. And then one day I was miserable enough, and I thought, I'm going to go to that meeting. And I didn't. And that went on for about a month. But one day I actually walked into the meeting. I found myself walking into the meeting, and the first thing I heard was, well, this is all about feeling your feelings and talking about them. And I thought, what a concept. Feel your feelings. I didn't think I had any feelings except anger. I knew I was angry, but I didn't recognize any other feelings. But at that point, I got the message, feel your feelings and talk about them. And so I started feeling my feelings and talking about them. And that's that huge block that Bob was talking about, this huge plug of repressed emotions. And that keeps us on the surface. This whole I in control is all about suppressing this huge plug of unacceptable thoughts and feelings. We don't even know they're there. They started in childhood. But we're busy repressing that, and that's how this I gets created, this I that's in control. Makes us feel secure. It's the illusion of control gives the illusion of security. And that just keeps us on this level. But once we get the idea, hey, there's really not a whole lot of fulfillment here. I'm not happy. Life sucks. Something's missing. What is it? And we start looking. We get the message we have to look within, and we start looking within through meditation, I think. I did. Start looking inside. It doesn't take long. We start hitting these things, and they start coming out. This is what caused me to feel like a zombie, I think, that these things were trying to come out, and I was busy putting the lid on. And it was this impasse. As soon as I went into the 12-step meeting, the impasse resolved. That feeling of being a zombie just went away. I didn't even notice it was gone. It just went away immediately. And the first feeling I felt was anger. And I spent 6 months being angry at my parents, And then underneath the anger, I realized the shame. I'm worthless. There's something wrong with me. I'm flawed. I'm defective. So I started feeling the shame. I recognized that it's fear underneath that. Fear of death, and that I didn't trust that if I let go of control, everything would be okay. I learned to let go of control. I just kept feeling these feelings. And after about 3 or 4 years, they all went away. Bob mentioned this idea. I used this analogy of an iceberg, and somebody else called it a mountain. There's this mountain of repressed feelings. Sunil called it a mountain. It feels like this huge mountain. To me, it was a huge iceberg, the size of a mountain, of frozen feelings. And in the 12-step program, I just felt them and talked about them. I said, the principal one was shame. I just feel worthless and defective. And everybody at the 12-step meeting just said, thanks, Mike. And it was the most amazing thing that all I had to do was say it, and somebody didn't have to tell me, like my parents had always told me, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. You're great. You're fine. You're wonderful. They kept telling me, don't feel your feelings and don't tell us about it. And the 12-step meeting said, yeah, feel your feelings and tell us about it. And they didn't judge me. They just heard what I had to say. And that situation allowed these things to come up, and I could say them, and they would dissipate, and then they were gone. And every time I felt that iceberg, every time I felt the same. It was cold and hard and big, but it kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. It went from being a huge iceberg to being an iceberg to being a huge rock, frozen rock. And it went to being a big, huge rock to a big rock, and from a big rock to a rock, and from there to a hard kernel. It just kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller over 3 years. But at the end of 3 years, they were all gone. All it takes is, how do we get rid of this huge plug? It's real simple. Feel your feelings and talk about them with somebody else. Get together in a group. A 12-step group was great because their whole thing is, we're not here to judge each other. We're not here to fix each other. We're here to listen to what each other has to say and say thank you, and that's it. And that really works. So if you can get together with other people, it doesn't have to be a 12-step group, but with the idea that you're going to give each other permission to feel feelings and express them without judgment, or nobody's trying to fix anybody else, nobody's giving advice. That's the recipe for getting rid of it. Feel your feelings and talk about them with somebody else. And just feeling them and talking about them, they go away. You let go of them. They dissipate. They're gone. When they're gone, the whole reason for having this I in control goes with them. You don't need an I in control if there's nothing to control. I found that at the end of 3 years, when the shame was and the fear was gone, the I went with it. There was a day in the 12-step meeting when I realized there's nobody in there. I was empty, hollow. And other people, and I would say, I feel empty and hollow. And they would say, oh. And I said, no, you don't understand. I feel empty. I feel hollow. So it was like, great. That guy is gone. Like Bob said, Mike is gone. What a relief. And from then, once the I is gone, because it's no longer needed to keep this plug in place, then the real self-inquiry can begin. Well, if I'm not that guy that I thought I was, what am I? And from that point, from being, I call the first one, that when the I goes away, I call that nirvana. It's the extinguishing, it's the blowing out of the flame of the candle of I. It's the first nirvana. It's wonderful. If you stay right there, being empty and hollow, it's wonderful. All that stuff is gone, and you're just living pure, simple life, moment to moment. But if you have the question like me, well, now what am I? Still that question, what am I, was in there. It's just an intellectual curiosity. If there's nobody in here, what do I mean when I say I? And for me, it was, well, I guess I'm the body. So then I started, because it's obvious the body's what's asking the question, what am I? There's nobody in there, so it's got to be the body talking. So what is that body? And I started asking, what is it? What's it made out of? Kept following that back. What I was doing intellectually, I was following it back intellectually this way until I arrived at the only thing that there was left was the absolute. And at that point, because I wasn't identifying with this false I was looking for myself. When I arrived at the absolute, I immediately identified with it. It's like, oh, I'm that. So how do we get there? How do we get to that disidentification with the I and re-identification with the absolute? The principal tool that I found was meditation, effortless meditation. Not trying to meditate, not doing anything, not perfecting control, but letting go of control. It's all about letting go of control. The whole path is only letting go of control. I maintain that everybody who ever woke up when they let go of control. If you could let go completely right now, this moment, you would wake up. Right now, this moment. But we've got a habit of being in control, and you can't just drop it right away. It's just, if you could, it would work, but I don't know anybody who has. Everybody's gone through some long period of struggling with control till they finally couldn't do it anymore and gave up. So how do you do that? And I think the easiest way to do it, there's no need to struggle for 20 years. You can start practicing letting go tonight by meditating before dinner and practicing letting go. Effortless meditation, what I mean by effortless meditation is thinking, and effortless is thinking without effort. So we have this technique of meditation that we're going to do, but then when we sit down with the intention of doing it, we don't lift a finger, we don't try to do it, we just take it as it comes. And that practice of meditating every evening and letting go of control, we end up relaxing into deeper. This is a normal cycle of thinking. We all go through this. This is the way the mind works. we recognize that we've been ruminating and we're not remembering our mantra. And so the mantra comes back to us because that was what we sat down to do, was think this mantra. So it will come automatically. And then we lose it automatically. And we get lost in thought. And we don't know we're lost in thought till we recognize, oh, I've been lost in thought. Then the mantra comes back again. And we lose it and get lost in thought, come back up, not lost in thought, and remember again, oh, the mantra. And this is the cycle of meditation. And this is not a how to meditate. This is a description of what happens when we sit down to practice effortless, practice letting go. This cycle, we notice this cycle occurring. Oh, I've been lost in thought. I've got 15 minutes, and I decided I was going to talk for 15 minutes and turn it over to Q&A. That's what this is all about, this little happy tune. I better turn it off because it's going to come back again. So this is not a how-to meditation. This is what happens when we sit down to not try to meditate. This will happen. And if we sit down with the intention of not putting any effort into it, this will happen. And we will notice it. That this happens spontaneously and automatically. Thinking is automatic and spontaneous. Yes.
Remind me of the significance of the curved line.
This is just the normal level of where we think and act. And usually we're aware here, and we're usually unaware here. We can be aware here. We can be aware that we're angry. We can be aware of shame, but usually we kind of kick them aside and get back into the comfort zone of being in control. But meditation, when we let go of control of meditation, we begin to dip into this area regularly in the meditation. We may not even know we've dipped into it. We may not be aware of what's happening here until we come back up, but we're dipping into it. This next bubble is the same bubble. You're meditating and you're letting go of control, and the tendency is for the mind to sink into a deeper level. So then this circle represents just a deeper level of meditation. Can you see okay? Deeper level of meditation, equally automatic. We're still not trying to meditate. This happens spontaneously and automatically too. None of this is done with any effort. This is all effortless. It just happens. So we operate down here a little deeper, and we may gain some creative insight, and we may get some inspiration, and it's a little bit more interesting. A good reason to meditate is transcend I thought I had that turned off. Good reason to meditate is that we begin to experience deeper levels of awareness in which we have creative muses and more intuitions. These things are necessary to waking up, is to function on this level, to be aware of this level. Got to get through this crap first, but we know we're doing something when we get some inspiration comes spontaneously in meditation, or some insight comes spontaneously in or out of meditation. Meditation will increase the frequency of insights and inspirations and intuitions, which are all really positive signs that we're going in the right direction, we're doing the right thing, and it makes meditation pleasant and makes us interested in keeping it up. The idea with effortless meditation is to not try to think the mantra, just accept it as a faint idea and lose it and recognize we've lost it, come back to it, and just do this for 20 minutes twice a day. What happens? Everything else, if we let go in meditation and practice letting go, the rest of the path unfolds spontaneously. You don't have to be. You don't even have to intend to become enlightened or even be looking for it. If you just practice letting go of control, you will wake up sooner or later. And I think sooner. I think 5 years is, for a young person, 5 years, plenty time. Older person, maybe a little longer. But if it takes 20 years, you're not being effortless. You're putting too much effort into it. You've screwed up. Yeah.
How about in the East? They say like some wise men like Ramana Maharshi, they say that you need a burning desire to become enlightened. But are you of different opinion?
No, No, I think
But how is
you
it
don't
effortless?
need a burning desire to be enlightened. You just need a burning desire to not be miserable. You have to be willing to let go of control. I think burning desire is helpful, but that's not. If you have a burning desire comes spontaneously and automatically. If you've got one, great. Trick is, don't let that burning desire cause you to put too much effort into it. If you say, well, geez, he says meditate twice a day for 20 minutes. What if I meditate 4 times a day for an hour and a half each time? Force myself to do it. What if I put twice as much effort into it? Well, then you won't get anywhere. The trouble with a burning desire is it could cause us to do too much. It's all about letting go of control. Getting rid of this I, this I concept, this I that's in control is a delusion. The only way to get rid of it is to stop being in control and see what happens. Any attempt to increase control is just going to perfect this delusion. So it's all about letting go of control. And I think the easiest way to do it is to sit down and let go of control for 20 minutes twice a day. I mean, what could happen, Anybody can do that. And if you really got to be in control, well, just drop it for 20 minutes and then I'll pick up control again. Yeah.
So what's the difference? What's the difference? Like you say, doing 4 times a day is too much, but why not 2 times is not too much?
It could be. It could be too much. I doubt it. I think probably twice a day for 15 or 20 minutes, that's not too much. What happens with people meditate more than that is that extra level of relaxation that they're getting. Anytime the body gets a deeper relaxation, then when it lets go, when the I supposedly lets go of control, the body is actually letting go of control and it's relaxing. And in the relaxed state, the nervous system has an opportunity to start jettisoning some of this stuff, this plug that's in the way. This is repressed stuff. When we stop repressing, when we let go of control, we stop repressing, the nervous system naturally starts trying to get rid of it. You meditate a lot, excessive meditation, this stuff just comes out faster. So you feel more shame, more anger, more fear, and you could think, oh crap, this meditation is not working. I thought I was going to feel better. I did, but now I'm meditating more and I'm feeling worse. I'm doing the wrong meditation. I'm doing it wrong. I better, if you're in a monastery, if you're taking a 3-month sabbatical, meditate 8 times a day I would still only meditate for 20 minutes each time, but meditate as many times as you can. You've got nothing, there's no reason to stop this process because you don't have any responsibility. You're off on a retreat someplace and you can just go as wacky as is necessary, But in general, most people have a life, they have a family to take care of, they have a job, and they can only take so much of this stuff being released before it starts interfering with their daily activities. So that's a reason not to overdo it. And it's not necessary. If this is the way of the householder, as it's been called. This is the way for people who are living normal lives. It's not the way of a monk. A monk can meditate more and get rid of it quicker, but most of us don't have that luxury, and slow and steady is fine. 5 minutes. So it's going to be all. Any more questions? Yes, Sunil.
Mike, is it possible that effortlessness also comes naturally, spontaneously?
Yeah.
That's a tagline.
Yeah.
With,
Effortlessness. Yeah. Everything is effortless. Thinking is effortless. Life is effortless. This whole thing happens of its own accord, spontaneously. It doesn't require any, like Bob says, fingernails grow, digestion occurs, heart beats. The whole thing is totally automatic, including thinking. This whole idea of these articles is that what we think is free will actually happened half a minute ago. So we think we're putting out effort. It's bullshit. Yes. Ken.
Carolyn and I started meditating
about, I guess, about a month ago. And I'm going to speak for myself. And I started to do the 20-minute meditation twice a day. By the second day, I went from the 20 minutes to the 50 minutes twice a day. And now, by the way, I'm retired. I have nothing else to do. And I have, even though there were things I wanted to do, I planned to do when we moved to our new place, I lost all real desire to do the things because I got into this meditation. And I feel drawn to it. And now I sometimes spend sometimes more than 3 hours a day doing meditation. I don't find it as an effort at all. And sometimes I may fall asleep at the end of a meditation. So I might, 20 minutes into it, at the end of it, I might fall asleep. And I'm not asking if it's okay. This is what I'm doing. And I guess I'm asking, is it okay to be doing that?
Yep. Yes.
I have nothing else to do.
It's fine. It's fine.
I could go to the meetings on Wednesday and I could listen to Bart forever. Sit and just be with Bart and never have to say anything. Just be with Bart. And to me, that's a meditation.
Yeah. That's absolutely, that's correct. If it feels good, that's the way to do it.
That's it.
But all I'm saying is, if it starts interfering with your normal routine, then you cut back on the meditation. That's, but in your case, fine. Yeah. Sunil?
Yeah, part of most yoga practices is something called savasana, which means lie down in a corpse pose, and you pretend, you try to block everything out.
Uh-huh.
So falling asleep, and you could fall asleep in that pose as well.
Yeah.
Falling asleep can be a natural ending to a meditation practice.
Yeah, it can be. A lot of people have trouble falling asleep in their meditation. They sit down for 20 minutes and then they start falling asleep. I tell people, if you're falling asleep, go ahead and fall asleep, because that's what the body's asking for. That's what the body wants to do. It's natural. It's going to help get rid of the stress. Go ahead and fall asleep. But then when you wake up, sit back up in the meditation and finish the meditation, because then you should be rested and you should be able to more easily appreciate some subtler states of the mantra, of thinking. This all requires being alert, by the way. You're not going to pick up on subtle states if you're not alert. So being rested and alert is good in meditation.
What's the third circle?
Same thing, but below the point where the neurons are interacting, there's no awareness. I hear people say, and I disagree, that pure awareness is the absolute, and that's our true self. I think pure awareness is just that bottom level of neurons are interacting. The nervous system is active, but it's not really doing anything. It's kind of like the carrier wave. To me, awareness, pure awareness without thought, is the carrier wave that thoughts are generated in. So we get to a point where we're appreciating, where we're experiencing pure awareness. Our mind is blank, it's quiet, it's peaceful, absolute silence. And that is the true self of experience. That's why I call this the absolute self of experience. We can't experience anything below that, because there is no neurons interacting. I mean, all of our experience is the nervous system in action. When the nervous system is not action, there's no experience. But that's still not the absolute true self. The true self, if we get to that point and we say, this is as far as I can go, this is great, this is my self of experience, then there still may be the question, well, what am I really? What does that mean? What's behind that? Well, this is what's behind it. The rest of the universe, the rest of creation, starting with the first vibration of the Absolute. And actually, when it comes down to it, the true self is the Absolute, off the bottom of the page. We can't experience it. It's not an object of experience, but it can be the self of knowledge. We can know, I am that.
15-minute break?